quarantine spirit, am I right? Yeah, less stress, let your mind be free. Shift when the fog lift, you can finally see. There's a feedback loop that delay like an echo. Tune your frequency up and let's go. Loud and clear is how you need to hear. And reason disappear when you feed the fear. There's a feedback loop, the warp like distortion. Keep your mind sharp like a swordsman.
Hey everybody.
Hello.
Welcome everybody to the Unashamed Truth podcast, our 11th episode. So we're now safely into the double digits. Yeah, we're starting to make some ground here with this podcast. So I'm really excited about it.
Time flies, dude.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy how quickly time is moving. And I think this is one of the good things to come out of the quarantine and the lockdown, you know, is the fact that we got to start this creative path, let's say, which is the podcast. So I'm really happy to have to introduce a special guest. As we mentioned, we decided that we wanted to cover an interesting topic this week. So it's something that's really tied to health and wellness. And particularly that of the African American community. So we have a very special guest with us, Daphnée, who is part of the Sickle Cell. She's the vice president. Vice president, very careful here. Right terms here. The vice president of the Sickle Cell Anemia Association. Thank you very much for making time to join us today for the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. Yes.
Thanks. And of course, we have Gift as usual. Gift, the homie.
Yes.
Yes, the very busy man. Yeah. So, how are you doing, Daphnée?
I'm great, and you? How you doing? How was your day?
Oh, you know what? Happier now that it's over. And the worst part is, I know that I still have stuff to do for work after the podcast. So this is a nice little break because it's an opportunity to do something creative and see people.
That's great.
Yeah. Yourself, Gift? How about you?
I'm happy it's over. I'm tired. It was a really good day at work. So this is like my relaxation time. So I'm really excited to be doing this.
Unwind live with friends, right?
Exactly.
That's very cool. So, Daphnée,
yes.
I want to start with getting to know you a little bit, kind of introduce you to our guests.
Okay.
So, now, one thing that I like to do is when I know somebody who's slightly famous for a reason, I like to.
Not at all.
So. For those who may be watching the podcast, who watch French television, Daphnée, you're from Montreal, right? And she's been on a show that is, I think, part of the culture here in Quebec, very particularly.
Yes.
Some people really love this show, other people find it cheesy, but I actually adore this show. And I'm too much of a chicken to participate on it. So Daphnée, would you like to tell us where people may know you from before?
So I went to the show that's called Un Souper Presque Parfait.
Okay.
Which is basically a cooking show where you invite strangers at your home and you cook a 3-course meal. So that was really fun. Do you know that wasn't actually the only show I've done?
Oh, that's not the only show. Okay.
No. I've done La Guerre des Clans a couple years back also, which is Family Feud in French.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
I like gaming shows and stuff. So if I could do more, I would actually do that.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, it's funny because like a Souper Presque Parfait was my wife and our favorite thing to just kind of get home from work and watch while we're having dinner. And it's just so funny because you see all of the funny tropes that are known in French in Quebec, you know. So it's just funny to see the array of personalities on the show, and the hosts, I find them to be hilarious. So
yes.
And how did you do when you participated?
How did I do?
Yeah.
I did okay. I believe I could have done way better. My entree was good. My dessert was also great. The main meal, It was good. The only thing is, the meat portion was too cooked, but I guess in our culture we overcook meat.
Yeah,
And I've learned that with time. I'm getting better at that.
I
But
see. I
I
see.
really did like the experience. The people were
Mhm.
nice. We had a lot of fun and so forth. So I would actually like to do it again.
That's
Nice.
awesome. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully,
If I
they'll
could, I
reach
would
out
do
to
it
you.
again.
Hopefully they'll reach out to you. You did us proud. We were happy to see that you stuck to
Thank
your
you.
roots, and you prepared a very delicious looking meal. So hopefully one day we'll have a dinner party, and we'll get to taste some of your cooking.
Definitely.
We'll be invited, man. Hopefully, we'll be invited.
That's it. That's it. So cool. So tell us a little bit like about what you do with the Sickle Cell Anemia Association and your
Okay.
involvement.
So, the Sickle Cell Anemia Association of Quebec, what we do mostly is try to reach out to kids, young adults that suffers from sickle cell.
Hmm.
A lot of the reference that we get is actually from nurses, from the hospital, doctors, because some of them still don't necessarily know that we exist.
Okay.
And so that's really nice when the hospitals really do help us with that, even the CLC or whatsoever. So what we do is mostly, how can I say, because for so long that sickness was almost taboo, so
Okay.
people wouldn't even talk about it even when they had it.
Okay.
So people for a long time, even myself that has it, and my sister, for so long we almost felt like we were the only two people that had it in Montreal, you know.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yes, but I did find the sickle cell station really young, so I'm happy about that. So we make people get together and we
Hmm.
share experiences, and we do that through activities.
Okay.
So we try to make regular activities on a regular base, what is from, like example, during the summertime, normally we have camp. We
Okay.
have a camp for kids and the teens. Their parents are actually allowed to come also. So it's
Okay.
a weekend getaway and have
Hmm.
fun activities. What is horseback riding,
Ooh.
boat, like kayak or stuff like that. A lot of outgoing outside activities.
Hmm.
We also do different stuff, whether it's going to a park, organize a sport event. And that's like the stuff for the kids. Sometimes we'll do like a movie night or a game night or stuff like that.
Hmm.
And our bigger events that we do also, we have once a year a gala, our annual gala,
Hmm.
which is like a nice black tie event or whatsoever.
Okay.
So
Cool.
that's really amazing. And also for the patients and the parents, we have how you can say that, une journée de répit, meaning like a day to relax, where
Okay.
we offer massages
Okay. It's
by
like
professional.
a spa
Obviously,
day.
I'm not the one giving the massages. I'm not by professionals, and with manicure, pedicures, and so forth, and just different activities throughout the year. It could
Hmm.
be like I remember once we did a family activity which was going to the Zuganbe.
Okay. Cool.
So we really try to get it together. Some of the
Hmm.
time we have more serious events, like for example a conference where
Hmm.
we have doctors, even patients, talking about the sickness, the new research, the new stuff that came out,
Hmm.
stuff like that, or just a roundtable of
Okay. Cool.
parents or patient talking and exchanging stuff they're going to, or where sometimes we'll have a guest, which will
Hmm.
normally be a doctor or a nurse, to
Hmm.
help us with the question that everybody could have.
I see.
Wow.
I see.
Yeah, so in
Cool.
general, that's what the association does.
Okay.
How long
Cool.
have you
Cool.
been a part of it?
How did I become part of it?
Yeah, and how long
That
have
is actually funny. The president of that station, which is named Wilson Saron, met my mom at the hospital while
Hmm.
he was with his daughter that had
Hmm.
sickle cell anemia, and she was with me, for sickle cell anemia at the hospital. So two parents with two kids suffering from the same sickness. So they actually got together. They got with other parents also, and they created the association, which was a different name before. It was like gathering of parents with kids suffering from sickle cell anemia. It was a long title, actually.
Too much
Yeah,
to
it
say.
was nice that it changed to that title. And from there, they started doing meetings and to, you know, try to understand the sickness and share stuff and do activities with the kids and so forth. And my mom was actually part of the committee with Wilson Sannon. And as I became, after I had my daughter, actually like 12 years ago, I decided, okay, I want to do something. And I actually joined the committee at that time, still working with Wilson Sannon.
Mhm.
So,
Cool.
yeah.
Awesome. So that's interesting, and it's awesome that you're a part of an association like that, because I can imagine that it must have felt very alone, you know, especially going through your teenage years. You have an illness that's not really something that really affects a lot of people per se, in terms of,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not really commonly known. So I can imagine it must have been great to find a resource like that, or to see a resource like that pull itself together.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what we try to do.
Hmm.
Because at some point you really feel lonely. And especially even today, like throughout the years, I've tried to find a way to explain exactly the best way to explain what is sickle cell to make people understand it. Because I could say, even myself, when I was younger, I didn't understand it. I didn't
Hmm.
know how to explain it. All I knew
Hmm.
was the pain that I felt every time I had a crisis. A
Okay,
crisis, though.
I
But
see. And actually, I think this is a good way to transition into this next question, which is,
yes.
please explain to us, what is sickle cell anemia?
Okay, so sickle cell anemia, one thing I want to say first, that is not, because there's a
Hmm.
lot of confusion with it. Most of the time when people hear the word sickle cell anemia, they just rethink the word anemia. And
Hmm.
anemia is normally when you don't have enough iron. Okay,
Hmm.
but sickle cell anemia, all put together, is really a blood disorder.
Okay.
Okay, is really the deformation of your red blood
Mhm.
cell. Okay,
Okay.
and why is it called sickle? Is like the shape is like a shape of a
Hmm.
croissant, they say.
Okay.
So normally your blood cell, they're supposed to be like a rounded shape, and they're
Hmm.
supposed to be, I can say, flexible. But
Hmm.
somebody with sickle cell anemia, most of the red blood cell are not the round shape, the
Okay.
like a croissant shape, and also they're more rigid. Okay,
Okay.
so not only that it's more rigid, the shape is not proper, but on top of that,
Hmm.
we don't even have enough. So what
Oh, okay.
happens when you have a crisis is like basically going on the 40 and there's an
Hmm.
accident and everything just blocks
Okay.
Oh,
because
that.
the blood cell cannot pass through your vein. So
Hmm.
everything.
Hello.
Oh no.
Uh-oh, did we lose our?
My phone, I just realized that.
Okay.
Yes, so everything just blocks there, like on a highway.
Hmm.
So because of that, imagine the blood cell does not fluctuate. The oxygen is not going through your vein. Okay. So
Hmm.
because of that, you're having a crisis. And that crisis is something that's really, but really painful.
Yeah.
I've tried to find a specific way of how to explain it, how bad the pain is. I remember I used to say it's like having your arm in a blender, but nobody knows what's really having your arm in your blender. You think about it, you're like, okay, yeah, for sure, it's painful.
That must hurt.
Yes. But
Yeah.
one thing that I thought about, and I'm just gonna, so listen to all the way. For example, you know, when you hit your elbow,
Yeah.
so it's painful for like what, 2 seconds? And
Hmm.
for that 2 seconds, when you really hit back your elbow, like you're
Hmm.
like in pain, you're like, oh my gosh, what is that pain? So
Hmm.
imagine having that pain times 100, and not
Okay.
just 2 seconds, but 1 week straight. So that's what
Wow.
it is when you're having a crisis. So automatically you're taken care of, you go to the
Hmm.
hospital, and they put you basically on narcotics. They
Okay.
put on morphine, codeine,
Okay.
Dilaudid, everything. You know,
Wow.
I've went through so much different medicine because after a while your system gets used to it.
Okay.
So you change from one to another, one to another. And I
Okay.
actually remember one of the last time that I went to the hospital for an appointment, and I was telling my doctor, like, I was getting pain so and so much, and I was like, okay, what's gonna happen next when that medicine doesn't work anymore? Because the last time I had it, I barely felt like it did something. Like the pain went down, but it didn't go to zero like it would do normally. And they're like, the next medicine that you're most probably gonna be taking is fentanyl. And that's like the drug that's been killing people
People,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
crazy.
Oh,
Obviously, it's a
okay.
small dosage, and they know what they're doing. But when you think about the name, you're like, oh, okay, that's what's next for me. So,
But
yeah,
I can imagine that's quite scary and quite,
indeed,
yeah. So, wow, I didn't realize that the pain could be that intense.
it is. Like you can't stay home when you're having a crisis. You're for sure going to the hospital, and
Okay.
going to be there between a week or two.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. So like I'm
That's,
curious, like when you were young, like how were you dealing with all this, and like how long did it take for you to be diagnosed or to know that you actually had it?
Um, Sorry. So yes, I actually found out when I was around 7 years old.
Okay.
But sickle cell anemia, you're actually born with it.
Right.
Is genetic and so forth. But my first big crisis when I found out when I was 7 years old, I remember I was on a school trip at Stade Olympique. We went swimming to the pool, and they called my mom and were like, "Okay, we brought your daughter to the hospital because she was in so much pain." And after doing so and so tests, that's when they told my mom that's what I had. And whenever she talks about that story, she's like, the first thing she did was cry because she had known of a kid that had died from sickle cell.
Wow.
And at that time, they told her that I will most probably not live past 10 years old.
wow.
So imagine you having your daughters at 6, 7, and then telling you she probably won't live past 10 years old. So my mom was, in panic, obviously. I remember the 10 years old ones became 45, then 55, and now today, like my last post I actually put on social media, this Nigerian woman, Aseta, which was, oh my gosh, almost I forgot her age a second. She was 93 years old, and she had sickle cell. Obviously, yes, she had a crisis and blah blah blah, but she was still there. And I actually met one a couple of years back, and it comes from somebody also that was in her 70s and so forth. With years, with medication, with new discoveries or whatsoever, they make the living better, and the hopes of living longer is also better.
I see. I
Yeah,
see.
but it's still scary.
Of course. Of course.
Yes.
So, what are the health complications that come with sickle cell anemia? Because we could, I guess it's easy to understand like the pain component of it, but what are the other things that it could possibly or potentially lead to?
Actually, it's a good question, because when I think about it, every time I have something going on with my life, in a way is physically, health wise or whatsoever, in a way is always related to my sickle cell anemia. Why did I say that? Because obviously your blood takes care of so much thing. It brings the oxygen and makes this and this function or whatsoever. So for example, me getting a simple cold, like some people will have a cold for like a week. Sometimes I'll have that same cold as strong as it was the first day to the last day for like a month straight. Yes. Some people will turn that cold, some other people that have sickle cell anemia also will turn that cold into pneumonia.
Okay.
Yeah, so it could become severe. So anything that happens for somebody else that could be all a small little thing just becomes bigger for us. So also in any type of infection, could be more damaging for us. Or even if we, how can I say, losing blood or whatsoever, if you were in an accident or anything like that, anything of that type is severe. That's why some people actually receive blood on a regular basis.
Okay, so some people get regular transfusions.
Exactly. They get regular transfusion to regenerate the blood and make sure that they have enough blood cell because, like I mentioned, at some point we don't have enough. And
Okay.
sometimes it can, how can I say, weaken us. We
Mm-hmm.
get
Of
more
course.
tired easily. We have to make sure to hydrate ourselves. Anybody should drink a lot of water, but we have to double make sure that we hydrate ourselves. Strong heat is not good
Okay.
for us. I've
Okay.
known to I had an asthma attack without having asthma.
Wow.
Whoa. Okay.
Yes, a couple of years back. That was actually really scary. I went to the emergency. They never knew what I had. They were like, "Okay, so you had an asthma attack, but you don't have asthma." And
Wow.
my doctor even confirmed to me afterwards. So, stuff like that could be scary. Or even strong cold.
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, it's funny. It's actually, I remember talking at one point with family members that like way older, like elderly, and they were talking during the cold time. Oh, my bones is hurting, and so forth and so forth, and I have arthritis, so forth and so forth, and everything they were talking, about the bones hurting when it's cold. That's exactly how I feel. Like
Mm.
I have a warm blanket whenever I get too cold when I'm at home during winter time because it just gets painful. Even though I don't get to the point of having a crisis and finding myself in the hospital, I'll have
Mm-hmm.
things there and there, and I have pills at home to take to make that pain go down.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez. That's so. Here you are hearing your aunts and uncles talk about maybe pain in the bones. You're feeling the same thing too as a young person. So
Yes.
that's intense. That's
Yeah,
really intense.
it is.
Yeah. So now, so you're also a mom. You were telling us you're worried about the kids maybe making a bit of noise, which is totally fine. Any of our fans of the podcast, they know that my daughter is usually photobomb at some point. So we're totally kid friendly. Um, but so carrying a child, are there also complications with that? Like when you get pregnant and delivery. Um,
Yes,
mm,
definitely. Having a child, being pregnant,
mhm,
obviously there's so much change in your body, and obviously your child is consuming from stuff from
mhm.
your body.
Yeah.
So I know way back then, when I had, let's say, the first conversation about having a kid and so forth, I've heard stories of a mother
Mhm.
dying while being
Wow.
pregnant
Oh.
because the blood, there's something about the blood, the kid was taking too much from her that it actually
Mm.
killed her.
Wow.
And I know from young, they always told me, you'll be able to have kids, but it'll be
Mhm.
difficult. So I knew
Mm.
from the get go a long time ago that it would be difficult. I have two kids, a daughter
Mhm.
that's 12 and a son that's 2.
Mhm.
And also, when you're pregnant, you have more chance because of that of having crisis.
Mhm.
More pain in your bones and your arms, legs, or whatsoever, and finding yourself in the hospital.
Mhm.
So when I had my daughter, it wasn't too bad. Yes, I did go in the hospital whatsoever, but it wasn't too bad. With my son, um, the pregnancy itself wasn't too bad.
Mhm.
What we had done transfusion, okay,
Okay.
which is called irritapherese. I should have
Okay.
looked for the word in English, but in French it's irritapherese. And basically what
Okay.
it does is that they wanted me to be prepared in case if I lose too much blood while I give birth, because I had a C-section the first time, so there was a good chance that I was gonna have one the second time.
Mhm.
And what that does, the itraferese, is that it takes out 75% exchange transfusion. Thank you, Lori.
Thanks, Larry.
See, she came in with a save.
Yes, that's perfect.
Thanks, Lori.
So what it did and what it does is, I remember, it takes out 70 or 75% of your blood
Wow.
and
Okay.
gives you 75% of somebody else's blood.
Mhm.
So what it does that is that for a certain period of time, you have almost no sickle cell in your system.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you. I'm trying my best. I'm no doctor. I'm no nurse or whatsoever. You know, it's really on the patient point of view. I do ask a lot of questions when I get any intervention whatsoever to be able to understand it. So basically, I had in my system 70 to 75% of somebody else's blood to make sure that I have more healthy blood cells in my system. So we did that. Everything went well. It was about maybe a month, I think, before I gave birth. I gave birth. I stayed in the hospital for 1 week, which is kind of normal with somebody with sickle cell. They want to make sure everything is okay. They want to make sure that your blood level is back up, your hemoglobin and so forth. So that was okay. Went back home after that 1 week, but I was not feeling good. I felt that there was not something right. And exactly 1 week later, I was started having pain in my arms and so forth. And normally, most of the time when you're having a crisis, when there's a blockage of the blood cells, it happens in your arm and legs most of the time.
So it's usually an extremity.
Exactly. So if it happens in your leg, trust me, you cannot walk. You can't.
Wow. Okay.
Arms, you cannot move it. The same thing. Sorry, I'm just a bit nervous. It's only 2 years ago, but it was a really traumatic part of my life. So I went to the hospital. At first, I'm just thinking it's just a regular crisis. But when I went there, they told me that I had created des anticorps. So I was basically rejecting the blood that I had received. So imagine that blood is three-fourths of the blood in my system. Yeah, 3/4. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's not my first language, but I'm still okay.
No, you're doing a phenomenal job.
Thank you. So it's 3/4 of my blood. So I'm rejecting it. So that's not good, you know. And after a couple of days, I was actually rejecting my own blood also.
Wow.
So it was not possible at this point to do another transfusion because it can make the situation worse. So they were giving me different medicine every day just to make sure that everything was coming back to normal. And at one point, it was not. It was actually going down. My hemoglobin was going down and down. And at one point, my doctor did not believe that I was going to make it.
Wow.
Because basically, imagine just rejecting every single blood that's in your system.
Yeah, all the blood that's in your system.
Exactly. But after about 10 days, it started to go back up slowly and everything, and I went back home. I know my doctor had told me in the future blood transfusion might be complicated for me. And me, I'm a type of person, I like to understand why. Like I understand if it's the same blood type as me, why did it not work? You know, it's the same blood. We, the Sickle Cell Anemia Association, work a lot with EMA Québec. Okay, because for us is really important because, like I mentioned, some people need blood transfusion every 6 weeks on a regular base just to be able to function normally. And some of those people are not even capable of working because of that. Obviously, that's people that's maybe in a situation that where they're more sick and they really need that transfusion to be able to be okay. So I've actually taken a small course with EMA Québec, and I had spoken about my situation to explain, okay, why. I want to understand why did it happen that way. And that's why us, the Sickle Cell Anemia Association, we really try to make people understand how important it is to give blood. Obviously, any nationally, we bleed red. Okay, it's the same thing. But apart from the blood type, whether you're A, B, or O, and negative, positive, there's more into it. Is, like I say, in a way, categories or whatsoever. So in my case, what she has said is that most probably I had the blood from somebody that was not from the Black community. So there was that part that made me reject that blood. So in the future, I'll have to make sure that I have somebody that's within the community. Actually, at EMA Québec, when they take your blood on the sheet that they fill out when they put your blood type and so forth. There's actually a little box just to mention, okay, that is from somebody from the Black community. And just that box makes a difference to saving somebody's life.
So just, this is going to open up a few questions, because I know within, especially the Black community, sometimes we're not very trusting of different things. For instance, it's not uncommon to hear Black people say they don't trust when it comes to being an organ donor, to fill in that part of their card because they fear that maybe they'll get better treatment at hospitals, so on and so forth. But I also know that there's sometimes just in general distrust because the medical professions tend to kind of misgauge how we as Black people are when we're sick, or so on and so forth. So was it hard for you to develop a certain level of trust with the medical industry as a person of color, and hearing some of the horror stories?
I've heard so many stories from different people. I've learned myself, it hasn't been that bad. I've had situation where it wasn't as bad as other stories I've heard. One thing I've always made sure is to go to the hospital that I'm treated at.
Okay.
Because the thing is with sickle cell, unfortunately, is that it's mostly, yes, the Black community that suffer from it. But it's not only the Black community.
Okay.
Indians, Greek, all basically, if I was to go back in history, any country that has been touched by malaria has people with sickle cell anemia. And I'm just going to explain why quickly. It's just the human body has, in a way, mutated to confront the malaria and created the sickle cell anemia. Okay,
so it's like a defense mechanism.
Yes, exactly. Because the fact that sickle cell anemia, your blood cell dies faster and you have less, makes this the fact that somebody, let's say if I was to get malaria, it wouldn't last long in my body because my blood cell, dies really quickly compared to others.
Okay, so it wouldn't carry as far with you as it would with somebody who's not affected by sickle cell anemia. Okay.
That's right. So, yes, so coming back to actually your initial question about horror stories. I've had people, so coming to that. So if you're let's say you live in an area where there's not so many Black people, welcome in region or whatsoever, or in Quebec City or whatsoever, or you don't go to a hospital that has a specific unit for people with sickle cell anemia. Student, when they become doctor and nurse, especially back then, I don't know how bad it is still now, when they would talk about that sickness, it was briefly. It would be part of the blood sickness or whatsoever. It would be briefly, but they wouldn't go in depth into it.
I see.
I remember back then going to CLC for birth controls. And I told her, okay, I have sickle cell, blah, blah, blah. I just always mention it just to make sure when I'm seeing a specialist. And she basically took a medical book in front of me, looked at it, made the research, and she was like, sorry, I can't help you. I'm not sure what to do.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Wow.
So that's just, one thing. But I've had people, for example, like I said, the pain is really bad.
It's intense.
So it's really intense. I've had a person, or more than one person, going to the emergency room, to a hospital that's not their hospital where they're followed, and saying, okay, I have sickle cell anemia, I have a crisis. And the thing is, when you have a crisis, sometimes you'll have a high fever, sometimes you won't. Sometimes you might be swollen, but most of the time you're not. So physically, you don't see the pain. So you have to believe what we're telling you. Wow. So I had a lot of friends that they believed they were drug addicts.
Wow.
Yes. So they believed they were drug addicts and they would not treat them because they believed they were just there to get drugs.
Wow.
And especially when you look at the list of drugs that we use to treat sickle cell anemia, I'm not saying that it's right, but I can understand why there's that concern. But it's also that's just discrimination,
So
I mean, you have a medical history of the person that you can easily consult, I'm assuming, to see whether or not they are a true sickle cell patient.
Yeah.
You know.
But that's why it is important. I know a couple of years they had slowly introduced to have your medical record to be available online in the medical field, but that wasn't always the case. And also, like I said, if you don't go to your hospital, you have a more chance to have that situation. Yeah. I normally would go to my hospital. I make sure I'd be like, okay, this is my doctor. He was in in this hospital that I'm in right now, this unit, and I'm followed for this. So most of the time, I haven't had any issue. The only maybe issue that I had once, because the thing is, when you're having a crisis, that's when you're most vulnerable for any type of infection, because there's not full oxygen going through your body because of the blockage. So normally when we get there, we don't wait in the waiting room forever. They basically, in less than an hour, like they take me to see a nurse, then I'm taken to the back, put on a bed. Not too long afterwards, a doctor will come, give the prescription, and it starts. But I remember once I went and the process was really long. And I was, I think, in one of my actual biggest crises. Normally, when I was younger, when I would get a crisis, it would be one arm or one leg at a time. Yeah. That time it was both of my legs and my arm in pain all at the same time.
Wow.
So you don't even know where to focus your mind to be able to like handle that pain. And the doctor was really busy. I remember my husband was like, oh my gosh, you need to stop. And I'm like, you don't understand the pain. At one point I was screaming at the nurse. I was like, just cut me off the leg. I can't take it. If you can't bring me a doctor now to give me the medication, cut off my leg. Wow. That's how bad the pain was. So
that's
yeah.
I can't imagine what it is to live through something like that. Yeah. And so, side question. I'm assuming that you end up probably having to take quite a few days from work and stuff like that. So, like, in terms of like just your employer and stuff like that, like, are they understanding about the situation?
Yeah, my current employers, I think they found out maybe a bit before I had my son, because again, being pregnant, meaning you have more regular appointments.
Okay.
So normally, let's say people would have appointments every month. I had it every 2 weeks. They really have to check everything, just make sure everything is okay. But no, my employer understand. I remember one employer when I had my daughter, they didn't understand at first. I was like, okay, no problem. Told my doctor, and my doctor delivered me like a package like this of what is sickle cell anemia.
Wow.
So I basically delivered the document, and it was understood from there. So
you're going to learn today.
Yes, I've been lucky, but I've known people that, like I said, couldn't work, lost their job, and so forth. So I've been lucky towards that, but it's not the case for everybody.
And something you also mentioned about like seeking treatment from your hospital that you're familiar with, that you generally go to, that makes me ask the question. So what about travel? When you travel, are you like, what precautions do you have to take?
But for sure, I have to make sure that I have my painkillers with me. Okay. That is definitely. I have to make sure that I take my other meds on a regular basis, but especially my painkillers. I remember once, I've never had, no, it's not true. I've had one big crisis while traveling, but I was so young that I barely even remembered. And I was actually hospitalized in the States, in New York, but I don't know how that was. I must have been a teen back then. And I remember one thing is that my mom going back and forth with the hospital from here to have them discuss with the doctors there to make sure that they understood what they had to do. Okay. You know, so that's one thing. But apart from that, yes, I've had pains or whatsoever while being away. And that's the thing with SISA, is that you never know when it's going to happen. It doesn't happen because you necessarily do this or that. Even though, let's say you keep warm properly or whatsoever, hydrate properly, it could just happen because it wants to happen. Like I remember going with family to a cottage, and everybody's partying, and me, I'm just in the bedroom because I'm in crazy pain. And I didn't have my painkillers with me, and going to the Jean Coutu, the nearest Jean Coutu, which was like at least 20, 30 minutes away because you're in a cottage.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
to go get some painkillers and hoping, oh my gosh, I hope that I do have another prescription available.
Yeah, and the thing about it too is when you go to those like remote places, who's to say that they necessarily have the medication that they don't have to order it from somewhere?
Exactly.
Right?
So yeah, but I just have to continue, living, doing what I do, and just hope it doesn't happen in an unfortunate way. But the worst thing that it did happen once, I believe that was 2 years ago. I was at a wedding with my husband and so forth, enjoying ourselves. And we actually got the kid with babysit by my parents and so forth. And the next day was my daughter's birthday. So 12th birthday, cake is ordered, guest is invited, everything, decoration is bought. And in the middle of the night, around 2 a.m., I started having a crisis. I'm like, okay, I'm hoping it's gonna pass. I take first Tylenol, then I take another medication that's called naproxen, which is for anti-inflammation. So for swollenness whatsoever, that doesn't work. Then I take a narcotic that's called Dilodid. That doesn't work. Like nothing works. When it gets at that point, I'm like, okay, my husband, we have to leave the hotel because we stayed away. I'm like, I have to go to the hospital. And the whole time that I'm on my way there is like 2, 3 a.m. I'm like, it's my daughter's birthday. So once at 6 a.m. when I start feeling better because I had a bunch of meds in my body, I have to start texting and making calls and cancel the birthday.
Oh my gosh.
So obviously my daughter knows my sickness and so forth, but she's still sad still.
Yeah,
and
of course.
I even had people that didn't get the message that showed up at my house for the party.
Oh boy.
So yeah. So that was unfortunate. I think that was the one time where I had to just leave everything there to go take care of myself at the hospital.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. So you're kind of, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that you're always kind of at the mercy of it in a certain way.
Yes, basically.
Good?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, I mean, I like to say, like, you do a really great job in terms of explaining, and you're very, very knowledgeable. And I assume, like, throughout the different stages of your life, like, you may have come across people who've tried to play doctor, like in terms of friends or family.
I wouldn't be. I would have to revoke my married to a Haitian person card if I didn't ask if Lil Masqueti has made its appearance. For those of you who don't know what Lil Masqueti is, then you must not have Haitian friends.
I had so many people just tell me, oh, but just eat more, oh my gosh, green vegetables, you'll be okay. Do exercise, you'll be okay. Or like I said, real masqueti, you'll be okay. No, it's a blood disorder.
Yeah.
It's a blood disorder. Even though massages does help for the circulation of the blood and so forth, that's actually one program that we have with the Sickle Cell Association is a massotherapy program for the kids and whatsoever that we offer at the hospital. While they're there for crisis, or even when they have an appointment with the doctor, we try to offer them that service on a regular basis because it does help. But all the other suggestion, obviously eating green vegetable is not a bad thing, but it's not going to solve my sickle cell anemia.
I see. So
I've had a lot of stuff like that, but it's funny, especially in the community and so forth.
Yeah.
Kill smoothies are not the answer?
No, definitely not.
Oh, now Nurse Lori has a comment here. So she's saying, yes, go to the children's. It's an amazing service.
Yes. Okay.
So to the friends of the podcast who know Nurse Lori, she worked actually for a little while in research at the Children's Hospital and specifically in sickle cell anemia. we wanted her to be a part of the podcast tonight, but she wanted to give Daphnée as much room as possible for her to kind of share her story. But she will be joining us next week because this is a two-part episode that we're doing. So we're speaking with Daphnée today, but next week we're going to be interviewing a friend of ours, Aviva, who's a mom who has a young child with sickle cell anemia. So to get her perspective and her experiences to what she's been through. And since Lori has worked at the Children's, she'll be joining us to cover that. So we're excited about this follow-up part of the episode. And I think you may actually know Aviva.
Yes, I've actually, I don't know if I think I've met her. I know I've talked to her already because of the Sickle Cell Association. So it's great. You meet a bunch of people with his parents or kids or young adults with the sickness. And that's amazing. And also one thing that I wanted to mention about the Sickle Cell Association of Quebec, apart from the gathering and so forth and the support that we bring, we actually try also to do different stuff. Like one thing that we did, the Sickle Cell World Day, which is June 19th, was after a request that we made.
Okay.
Yes, so
that makes so much sense.
So that's a great accomplishment that we did to have our own day for the sickle cell, and it's really recognized worldwide and so forth. There's always stuff going around on social media around that time. And the other great thing, one of the reasons why I only found out that I had sickle cell when I was 7 years old, apart from the fact that I didn't have crisis before then, is because we didn't take tests for that when children were born. And I believe since November 2013, automatically, if you're a child that has a possibility of having sickle cell because you come from a community that is known to maybe have it, you get tested at birth automatically. So
I see. And
you'll know ahead.
That's actually something that I was chit-chatting with Lori yesterday, because I remember when I was growing up in high school, there was a day where they did testing for sickle cell anemia.
Oh, that's amazing.
And they tested particularly kids that were, Black, and also the Greek community. And when I asked a question about distrust a little bit, I remember growing up, there were some parents that didn't feel comfortable with the school wanting to do a random blood test on the Black kids, because they just felt like, why not everybody? Like, why just ours, But it's because, as you say, it's really something that affects mainly places that have been affected by malaria.
That's right. Yes.
People from places that have been affected by malaria. Yeah. So it's
so that's amazing. No, we do have a clinic also that offers testing, because the thing is, there's a lot of people that may have the trace and don't know about it. For example, my husband has the trace, but he never knew about it till we were about to have a kid, and they were like, "Oh, we have to test you also." So you can have the sickness, as I do. There's SS and there's SC. It's just two different levels. Normally they would say SS is more severe, but I've seen people with SC that's actually more severe than SS, and people with SS that don't have that many crises. So it's just two different categories. Then after that, you can have the trace. We're gonna say something.
I was gonna ask, what are the distinctions? Like, what's the big differentiator between SS and SC?
Is in the testing is basically the type. I'm not trying to say that, but is the type of. I don't want to say the type of blood or whatsoever. There's something distinguishing. There has a distinction between them, but for us as a patient, we just know that it's just a different level. One is stronger than the other.
I see. One is more intense than the other. Okay.
Exactly.
And actually, that was going to be my next question: is there such thing as mild cases versus severe cases?
But that's, like I said, the SS and the SC, they were a genotype. Thank you.
Yes.
It's a different genotype. The S and the C is a different genotype.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
But like I said, there has people that has SS and don't have as many crises as a SC person. I find with time, The difference is almost none apart from the biological side of it. Okay, but towards the sickness, somebody that's SC instead of SS could be as severely affected by the sickness.
I see.
And when you carry the sickness, you're AC or AS.
Okay.
And when you carry it, you don't have the crisis. You're just a carrier of the sickness, and you could give it to your children.
I see. You could pass it on potentially.
Exactly.
Okay. Cool.
So people could be carriers and don't know about it.
And it's really when you have, I guess, two carriers come together, that's when you can have a child.
Exactly.
So now in your case, do your children present with symptoms of?
Luckily, they only are carriers, both of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. That's good news.
Yeah, it is.
Really good
I guess I got lucky on that.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to look for the silver lining.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I had a question, but now I'm drawing a blank. So if you have a question, go ahead.
What you think on that? I'm curious, like, what misconceptions have you had to address within the Black community, for example, with regards to sickle cell? Like, have you had opportunities where you've had to,
especially with the fact that they don't understand what sickle cell is, that is not something that could go away, and it's not about eating right, about eating green vegetables and so forth. And the fact that is, when you are in a crisis, is like, it's not physical. Like you don't see it. Some people are wondering, are you faking it? Especially when I was missing school back in high school, when people were like, oh, you just wanted some extra vacation or whatsoever. But it's like, no, I was sick in the hospital for the whole week that I was not there. So it's that fact that they don't see something. Like, I don't have a bump on my skin. Like, there's not something physical about it. So because of that, it makes it harder for people to understand it. I do know people that because of sickle cell, they had to have hip replacement or so forth. Different situation whatsoever. But for me, it's not in my case. But it's not because of that I haven't had pain because of it, or I haven't went to the hospital because of it. And also the other thing, when I explain people how important it is to give blood, especially within our community, is really hard to make people understand. Blood could save us. Anybody can need blood. Just like the same thing when you were making reference about being a donor, you're still going to get great medical treatment or so forth. And your family are the one that's going to decide at the end if, yes, they're going to pull the plug and afterwards take your organs or whatsoever. And normally when they offer you that, is that they believe that there's nothing else they could do for you at that point. Exactly. So that also is important, the same way as giving blood is really important, especially with the situation that I explained. Receiving blood from your own community is even more effective than receiving blood in general.
Okay, so it's really important that we get the word out there.
Yes.
Make sure you donate. And I've done it actually twice myself.
Great.
Yeah, and you get a snack afterwards,
Yes.
Kind of cool. And no, I mean, overall, it's really worthwhile to do something like that, because you don't know whose life you're going to impact. And we have our own story with when a blood transfusion was important, and happened to us when Fabi had some complications with delivering our daughter Jordan. And I'm so thankful that she had somebody that took the time out of their day, and you don't know the impact that it can have, the life that it can save, and Definitely. Now, so I don't want to go too much into detail on this. This is a little bit of a side note, but my father is somebody who is on the organ transplant list. He's on standby.
Okay.
And so us in the Black community, who are people who are afraid, or not necessarily afraid, but have certain reservations when it comes to organ donation, we have to understand that it helps us too, so we have to be mindful of that,
Definitely.
Yeah. So now, actually, my question came back. So we're in a very important time here in Quebec, where there are protests and there are people that are debating whether or not they need to wear a mask, and they're looking at people are looking at their own interests. As somebody with sickle cell anemia, I can imagine that you must also be very, very mindful, to try to avoid having to go to the hospital, especially in this COVID time. So how have you been handling the pandemic?
I would say especially the first month, I was scared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometime normally the kids would stay home and me and my husband would go do groceries, and a lot of the time the first month he would go alone because I was actually nervous. I was actually nervous, and also I was watching the news on a regular base, and I stopped because it was getting me more scared. But for sure, I wash my hands a lot, disinfect my hands a lot. I wear my mask where I have to wear it, and even me, as I'm a normal person. It could happen. I get out of the car and I'm like, oh damn, I forgot my mask, and I go and get it. But I do wear it, and I do think it's important. And I know I've seen a lot of on my feed people that are like they're against it or whatsoever. That's their decision. But I do wear it not only for my safety, but for the safety of somebody, other people around us. People think it's a conspiracy. People think it's not needed. People are saying they can't breathe. Trust me, you could breathe. Okay, you could breathe. You're still gonna be able to breathe. It's just being cautious. People died and whatsoever. But I remember once, actually, I did the test twice.
Okay.
I don't remember why the first time. The first time is because I felt that I had symptoms, but I didn't have it. And the second time was because at the daycare of my son, somebody and his group had it. So just to be safe, we all got tested at home. And I remember when I spoke with my doctor and so forth, they were like, look, up to now, of all the patients that I followed with sickle cell anemia, we had a few that had it. And out of the few that had it, 3 made it to a critical condition. But it was a patient, for example, that were not taking certain meds on a regular base, meaning that the blood cell levels was not as high and blah, blah, blah. But if you're taking your meds on a regular base, you should be okay. For sure, we would take you in and make sure that your lungs are okay and so forth, but most probably you'll be able to stay home and be safe. So from there, I actually got less scared, and I was like, okay, like I'm hopeful, but obviously be cautious and safe about it.
Of course. But still, I think, for those who are not dealing with a chronic illness, I think it's really just important, once again, remember those who are in positions like, Daphnée is, where she has a chronic illness, and, for her well-being, wear a mask. It's not going to hurt you. If you're going indoors to the store, just wear it. Nobody likes smelling their own breath. I get it. But and I think, you know what? Look, man, I think that's really what this mask thing is. It's not that people can't breathe. It's that they don't like to smell their own breath. But I think
the reality is true, man. It's true.
I think it's a reminder to these people: brush your teeth properly.
That's right.
A stick of gum, just a stick of gum helps. It goes a long way. Well, I so now, Daphnée, we posted. I made sure that we posted in the comments below or in the description below the links to the association, because of course it's really important, for people to spread the word. If you have friends who may be dealing with sickle cell anemia, if you have parents who or something like that may have a child who may be affected, we want to make sure that they know where to turn to. So thank you for providing us with the list, with the link to the association. Do you have any upcoming events or anything?
Right now, because of the COVID, there's so many stuff that we had to push. For example, our gala normally was in May, and we had to cancel it, and that's our big event of the year. Right now, with stuff coming back, we're trying to organize an activity for the patients, so we're looking into that to organize an activity probably in September or so forth. But we have nothing concrete. We're still looking into the situation of what is possible, how many people we would be able to bring, and so forth. But it did put a lot of stuff down because of that.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there opportunities for donations, like for people to
Definitely,
buy like
definitely.
money to donate? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Normally on our website, there's directly a link for Canada that directs you to the Canada Help website to our page for the sickle cell anemia. So donation could definitely be there. Also, it would be nice if people would follow our Facebook and Instagram page. We do put information up to date regularly on there if we have events, if it's stuff going on and so forth, or new accomplishments and so forth. So that's nice.
Awesome. Cool. And then I saw that you also shared a link with us. I think it was for your business.
Yes.
I'm curious to know, what is this about? I didn't know that you were an entrepreneur as well.
Yes, but I've recently started that business. So it's basically is different products for women. Mannequin lashes, slides, purses that matches with the slides, makeup bag, and lip gloss. So stuff like that. So people could definitely visit the IG. The website link is on it, and so forth.
Awesome. And I've always known you to be stylish, because for those of you who don't know, so Daphnée works with my wife, and we would always cross each other as, like, I was dropping off my wife at work, and then I would go to the metro to get to my office downtown, and always on her nines, always fashionably well put together. So it's cool. But congratulations on this new business, and
Thank you.
And I wish you all the best. And also with your health, I wish you all the best, and continue to stay safe and take your precautions.
Yes. Thank you, you guys.
Thank you so much for joining us. I learned a lot, and
I'm happy.
Likewise.
Also, yeah, I appreciated even the way you explain things. It was like very easy to understand. So
it's years of training.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, and years of personal experience, right? Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us, Daphnée. And listen, I'm going to just throw the invitation. If you want to join us next week, it's up to you, if you want to come back for part 2. But yeah, we'll have Lori hopefully join us. And then also we'll be speaking with Aviva. So thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for teaching us what it is to deal with sickle cell anemia. And we hope to hear more about you and hear from you again soon.
Okay. Thank you for the invitation, guys. It was amazing. I loved it.
Awesome. And for those of you watching the podcast, thank you for joining us. Please join us again next week for part 2, where we'll be speaking to a mom of a child with sickle cell. Please share this video with your friends. Please invite your friends to like and subscribe to the podcast. Yes. And it encourages us to keep doing cool interviews like this. So thank you so much for watching tonight. And we'll see you guys again in the near future.
Have a good one.
All right, have a good one, everybody. Good night.
Good evening. Bye.
Bye.